Mr. Bill Bartman. Sitting down is good. Thank you. Okay, I wanted you to see that I really do own a suit. Actually, it's rented. I have to have it back by 5. Okay, today's going to be good. We're going to do some stuff that nobody's ever done before. We're going to go to some places that nobody else has ever gone to. I'm going to show you some things that I've never shown anyone else. Hand in hand with raising your self-esteem is the reverse side of that same coin. And that's how to overcome failure. Because every one of us have screwed up. Every one of us has failed. Every one of us has made a mistake. Now, you can pick whichever term you want to use to describe what I just tried to say, but everybody in this room, we've done it. Some of us, epic proportions. Some of us have just been quiet failures. Mine have been gargantuan. It's like a giant sequoia falling when I fail. The whole world seems to hear about it. I make national news when I screw up. So it doesn't matter. But the point of this process is I've learned a lot of things about failure. And in fact, Kathy and I joked that, that we know there's a Dr. Phil on TV. And I've said, I could be Dr. Failure. And I was serious, and she wouldn't let me do it, so I just did it. That's my way of getting even. Think about it. There are so many books on success and none on failure. Like nobody wants to be labeled as the expert on failure. Well, how do you know? Well, because I screwed up a lot. Well, I have screwed up a lot, and I've learned some things. And here are some of the things that I've learned. And I will give you this PowerPoint if you want it, so you don't need to be copiously taking notes. I think that's a bunch of silly stuff. I'd rather have you just, no. Nah, it's the way it should be, okay? Number 1, we will fail, period. End of sentence. It's going to happen. I gave a speech to the American Academy of Achievement in Jackson Hole, Wyoming in 1998, and the American Academy of Achievement is really a neat little deal where they bring together 600 of the brightest high school kids in America. And then at that event, they bring in notables. The year I was there, and they lure us there, us notables, by giving us an award. And you heard I got this American Academy of Achievement Golden Plate Award. Well, that year, Colin Powell and Michael Dell and Michael Jordan and, I don't know, Susan Butcher, the lady that won the Iditarod a couple of years earlier. There was a dozen of us and a couple of Nobel Prize winners. And we had to spend 3 days talking to these kids. That was our price. We had to sing for our supper. So we did, literally. We would, each day we'd be at a different table for breakfast, different table for lunch, different table for dinner. And we the quote-unquote award winners, would all be at a different table with as many as 10 kids. And we spent this whole half week with them. And at the end of which, we all were obligated to get up and give a speech. Not just table talk at breakfast or lunch or dinner, but address the entire 600-person audience. And you can imagine people like George Tenet, then the director of the CIA, and Dick Cheney, who wasn't yet vice president, and Colin Powell, and some of those kind of people. They got up and gave great speeches. These guys are really good. They do it every day of their life. And they all talked about success and victory and accomplishing and how to do this and how to do that. And these guys know what they're talking about. They've done some stuff. I got up and talked about failure because these kids had not yet failed. These kids were the brightest kids in America. And they didn't know what screwing up was yet. And I told them I felt sorry for them. No, I did. Those were my words. I said, man, you guys, I feel really bad for you guys. The hush went over the audience like, the Antichrist just showed up. And I said, hey, you guys are bright, you're intelligent, you're wonderful, you're here because you're so very special. And someday, you're going to screw up. And someday you're going to fail, and someday you're going to make a mistake, and someday you're going to do something wrong, and someday it's just not going to work the way you wanted it to work. And you're going to be crushed because you don't know what failure is. We do. We're better than that. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. We've learned some things they haven't yet learned. Libraries are full of books on how to succeed. There's only one halfway decent book on failure that I've ever found. It's written by John Maxwell called Failing Forward. John Maxwell has never failed. So I don't know what in the hell he's writing about. Now, I like John Maxwell, and I read the book. But I'm telling you, it'd be like talking to a Catholic priest about sex. He's not supposed to know. Okay. Number 3, failure can be devastating. Financially, physically, psychologically, all of the ways. I mean, we think of failure sometimes just as a business thing. It's not. It's psychological, it's social. When you fail, you become ostracized. You become a pariah in your own community, whether that's a community of 2 people or a community of 100,000 people in a city. You become the black sheep of the family. And we've all shaking our head like, yeah, got you on that one. Okay. Number 4, success and failure are subjective terms, like the term pretty. What's pretty for me, the lady sitting in the back of the room. But that may not be your definition. We all get to pick our own. Success and failure are equally subjective. Subjective meaning they're not quantifiable. There is no one definition. It's what we think it is. We, us, our brain. Whatever we call it, that's what it is. And that's important to know, because once you understand that, you go, wait a minute, why don't I just change my definition? Why don't I change the way I think about success and failure? And gee, all of a sudden, the world becomes easier. Both success and failure are temporary. We'll talk about some of both of those. We've all heard stories about the heavyweight champion of the world ending up as a doorman in Las Vegas, or the person who wins the Heisman Trophy pawning it, or an NFL star pawning a Super Bowl ring. How temporary is that? And once we thought they were terribly successful, and now obviously they're not successful at all. Failure is equally temporary. It wears off quickly, if we let it. We can let it drag us down forever, but honestly, Andy Warhol was right. Everybody will have their 15 minutes of fame. I'm telling you, you have your 15 minutes of shame also. But they're both just 15 minutes. And if you let them last any longer than that, shame on you. Success and failure are different sides of the same thing. I mean, think of the universe as we understand it. There's law of reciprocity, a yin and a yang, a good and a bad, an up and a down, right and left, black, white. I mean, you know, polarity, opposites. Success and failure are just that. They're just opposite sides of the same thing. So if I were to, who's got a coin? Who's got a quarter? Anybody trust me with their money? I'm supposed to catch that? Okay, I got this one, okay. It's an American quarter. You guys from Canada going, what's that? Okay. Heads, tails. Get it? Understand the concept. Is this worth 25 cents? It's a quarter. Of course it is. Is it worth more if the head side is showing or if the tail side is showing? Different sides, same thing. Are you worth any more if your success side is showing or if your failure side is showing? You're worth exactly the same. But you don't see it that way. You think you become worth less if the other side is showing. No, the other side is just the other side. Don't give it any extra value. I mean, if that's not graphic enough, try this. I don't have any coins. Well, I got one of these, $100 bill. Now, neat, clean, crisp. No, I don't iron them. You sit on them long enough, they get flat. Now, if I were to crumple it all up, is it worth less than $100? Is it worth less than $100? Yet? It's never going to be worth less than $100. No matter what I do to it, it's never worth less than $100. No matter what anybody does to you, you're not worth anything less than what you already are. So what I said there earlier to Christian, the only opinion of you that matters is your own. Those other people don't know you. What do they know about you? They know some things. They know a couple of events. They know a situation. They know a deal, a day, a life, 1 hour of your life. They don't know you. You know, they looked through a knothole and saw a picture. But if they took the fence down, they would have seen the whole thing. And you're remarkably different than the view they get looking through that knothole. Any failure can be overcome. Any failure. Kathy and I were $1 million in the hole, in bankruptcy, and nothing. No money, no job, nothing. And went from there to billionaire status. Any failure can be overcome. Failure isn't a dead end. It's just really a detour. I've got some examples for you. In 1962, a recording group, you can read. Can you all read in the back? You see all that? Okay. Now think about that. Somebody's opinion of the Beatles was they shouldn't be doing this. Now how wrong was that idiot? How about this guy? Was once told by a prospective employer he'd never be a good cartoon artist. You should seek another line of work. How about this guy? Booed off stage. Obviously, he learned how to make a career out of it. Sent back to the minors after a very disappointing first year in the majors. That would have killed most people, would have crushed them. You spend your whole life trying to become a ball player, you make it through the minors, you get called up, and after your first year, you get sent back. Brooks Robinson went on to become the greatest third baseman of all time. This guy was 55 years old, had racked up more than 1,000 major league defeats, and had been fired as a manager 3 times. Think he had seen failure? I would think. Then he went on to win 3 World Series rings. How about this fellow? Missed more than 9,000 shots in his career, lost 300 games, was given the job of taking the game-winning shot 26 times and missed 26 times. And when Michael was asked about that, that was his response. Think about it. I failed over and over and over again in my life. That is why I succeed. We have failed, all of us. And that makes us better than those 600 kids sitting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We're smarter. We're stronger. We know some things that they don't know yet. And that gives us an edge that we ought to be able to take advantage of. Instead of dragging us down, it should buoy us up. So let's go to the 10 steps of how to overcome failure. First, you need to get help. No one overcomes failure by themselves. No one. Now, I've had as much failure as probably anybody walking the face of the planet Earth, and I don't say that to brag. I just say it because I think it's true. And I know probably as much about it as most, and I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't do it without the 3 things I'm going to talk about. Faith. I think faith is important. I'm not here to preach religion, mine or anybody else's. But I think faith as a concept is very important, especially when you're down, especially when you're getting the crap kicked out of you, especially when life sucks. It's really good to believe in something, whatever it is. Family, absolutely crucial. I couldn't have done what I've done without mine. They were with me in my darkest days and in the brightest days. And friends, yeah. So depending on which three of those is on top at a given moment, it doesn't matter. Could be reverse order. Could be any order. Makes no difference. But when you're failing, when life sucks, when things are really bad, when crap happens, that's where you start looking. The first thing you do is find your support team. Who are the people that still love you? Who are the people who still care? Who are the people that still value you? Quit hanging out with the negatives who are saying, well, you stupid person, you screwed up again. Duh, I already know that. I don't need to be reminded. What I need is somebody to hug me and kiss me and hold me and tell me it's okay. That's what you need. Now, does that sound corny coming from a guy on stage? No, it's the truth. I've overcome some tremendous failures by getting those three things. Whether they're spiritual hugs or familial hugs or friends hugs, they're hugs. They help you survive the stuff that's going to happen in your life or is presently happening. Second step, you need to acknowledge it and admit it. And that's so hard for some of us. No, crap does happen. It just happens. Now, sometimes there are things we've done wrong. Sometimes there are things that are self-induced. Sometimes we make some pretty crappy decisions. And sometimes things happen to us that we didn't have much, if anything, to do with. Sometimes we just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that happens too. There are people who take stages like this and say that never happens, that we are a product of every decision we've ever made. And I guess metaphysically that's probably accurate. But there's some crap that happened in my life that I don't think I had a lot to do with, but I know it still happened. But you admit it, you acknowledge it, you accept it, because crap happens, and you get over it. You can't be in denial, and sometimes we are. You have to understand, hey, I've made a mistake, I screwed up, and I accept it for what it is. Number 3, you need to quantify it accurately. And the whole point of the last 2 hours is about quantification, because everyone walked into the room knowing how to quantify their failures. They put them way up there on the top. They didn't know how to quantify their successes. They put them way down at the bottom. Well, I'm also here to tell you that most of you have quantified your failures wrong. Most of you have exaggerated it. Most of you have made a bigger deal out of the things that have happened in your life than they really deserved. If you had seen it honestly, if you had seen it sincerely, if you had measured it accurately, you wouldn't be thinking some of the thoughts you were thinking. You gave it more weight, more value than it truly had coming. You need to see it for what it truly is, and you need to measure it accurately. We're so prone to exaggerate our own weaknesses. We overvalue the things we can't do, and we undervalue the things we can do. Number 4, compare your failure to your prior history. It's enlightening when you look at it from that perspective. Mostly we don't. Mostly when we have a failure staring us in the face, we get so consumed with it, the instant failure, the one right now, that we don't look beyond that. Well, if you were to look beyond it, you would see that you've already succeeded by overcoming previous failures. Is this your first one? No. And you're here, you made it, you're alive, you're well, you're healthy, you're able, you're up, you're going again. Well, wait a minute. I thought I failed. Well, you did, but you got over it. So what makes you think you can't get over this one? Why is this one different than the last one? It's not. It's the same thing. The way to, again, quantify this for yourself. I mean, you can take my word for this stuff, or you can take your word for this stuff. And I like it better when you take your word for this stuff. And a way you can prove I'm right and you're right is make a list of all your successes and all your failures. Now, we talked about notable accomplishments and doing them, and you know how that program works, and I want you to do that. This is a little different. This is where you're also talking about your negatives, and put them side by side on a lined sheet of paper. And I guarantee you your successes will be longer than your failures. I have never, ever met a person that had more failures than successes if they were honest. Most of us haven't been honest. Most of us just look at one side of the ledger and say, yeah, I sure screwed up. Yeah, you did. But you did this too. And gee, when you start balancing them, you say, hey, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Because remember, self-esteem is you. Self-esteem is not mine, not his, not hers, not somebody else's, it's yours. So you got to look at your own package, your own picture. Number 5, you need to forgive those that are involved in whatever it is that's happened in your life that's given you all of this grief. You need to forgive them first. When Kathy and I were in Las Vegas this past January for a convention, a chiropractic convention, we got to meet a lot of people. And one of the people that I met is a lady named Deb Caldwell, and she gave me permission to share an email that she sent me just recently, and it's appropriate. Deb Caldwell's son was murdered about 10 years ago, and it devastated her. It was a mother-son relationship that I don't know that I could describe because I don't have that in my experience, but must have been really, really neat. But this kid got murdered. You know, one of those out of the clear blue, some innocent person just ended up dead. It devastated her. And here she is all these years later, and Kathy and I get the privilege of meeting her. I sat with her for a few minutes, and she told me her story, and I said, well, I said, this is going to sound really strange, Deb, and this is not about being Christian or some other religious thing. I said, you really need to forgive that person. You know, it is. Christianity tells you that forgiveness is the first principle, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to tell you that for self-esteem and for getting over failure, it's the first principle. Because you can't go forward looking backwards. And you can't be eat up with hate. And you can't be letting them continue to win. They've already won once. And if you let them get the best of you, they're still winning. So screw them, forgive them. And what you're doing is you're cutting the string. So Deb Caldwell sent me a letter dated April 28. Bill, thank you so very much for keeping me informed. You will help so many. I want to let you know that JD, that's her son, JD's murderer, Robert Morales, is now willing to have a face-to-face meeting with me. So today I'm sending the forgiveness letter directly to the warden of the Florence prison. He has told me that he will hand-deliver it personally to Robert Morales. What a painful process. However, I can tell you that on Tuesday I did pray for him. So thank you so very much for your encouragement. I do not know if it would have happened so quickly without your assistance. So now my next project, writing a book. My thought was to start from the time they notified me about JD and write about the journey since that time. What are your thoughts? On Sunday, we had a gathering at the state capitol for National Crime Victims Week. Monday, our governor signed the 3-strike sentencing bill. Channel 10 did an interview with me. It was so refreshing to see so many people at this event and to see how far we have come. Again, thank you for all of your encouragement and assistance, Deb. That's what happened because she forgave. Now, how hard would it be for somebody to forgive the guy that kills your son? I don't know that I could, honestly. I don't know that I have that in me, but I asked her to have it in her, and she did. And once she freed herself up from this guy, she was able to do something positive with it. She's now writing a book about the experience. She's now on TV talking to people like her who share a commonality. This woman's going to be a positive voice for people in a very ugly, nasty situation, none of which she could have or would have done until one step happened. She decided to forgive him, to quit hating him and just forgive him. Now, she doesn't have to like him, doesn't have to spend any time with him, doesn't have to send him flowers, doesn't have to do any of that stuff. She just has to get him out of her head. Because while he's in her head, he's still winning. And the day she forgave him, he left her head. And now he's gone. Powerful stuff. Next step, you need to forgive yourself. It's hard to forgive other people. It's even harder to forgive ourselves. We mostly are our own worst critic. And we are always so hard on us because we know our warts and all. We see us naked in the mirror. We know us. And we look at ourselves differently and go, man, I'm not as good as, I'm not as tall as, I'm not as pretty as, I'm X, Y, Z or not. And yeah, that's probably something true. We need to forgive ourselves too. We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. Nobody said we had to be. Why in the heck did we have to have that in our head? And why are we measuring us as against perfection? Why don't we just measure us for what we are? And if we do, we're willing to accept ourselves. So when we screw up, we should forgive ourselves. And I'm not saying we just blow it off and act like it didn't happen and act like we're in la-la land and say, oh, gee, too bad, must have been God's will. No, baloney, you did it. It's your fault. It happened. Get over it. Forgive yourself and move along. Thank you very much. Do what you can about what it is you've done wrong, but when you're done doing that, quit. Go forward. You need to learn from all of your mistakes or failures, however you term that word, because in every one of them, we pay one heck of a tuition. We need to get the education. I mean, you wouldn't send your money to school and not show up. You wouldn't send me money to come here today and not show up. And if you weren't able to show up, you would have called and said, I want my money back. I'd like a refund. Or I'd like to come to your next engagement or something. You would have done that. You would have said, hey, wait, I paid for it, I want it. Why don't we expect the same thing out of our failures? You paid for it. You paid for it with really serious skin in the game. What did you get for it? Nothing yet. Learn from it. And if you can learn from the mistake you made, wow. Now all of a sudden it's not quite the ugly, nasty mistake it used to be. It's just an experience you had. A way to do that is to reframe it. You know how I think about the word promise versus the word goal. We've gone through that, and we're going to talk about it some more later. Why can't we use semantics for this as well? And you say, well, isn't that just mind games? Aren't you just fooling yourself? No. Somebody else picked the word failure. There wasn't a word before they picked that one. What if they were wrong? What if they should have picked the word experience for that thing? They say, well, that's stupid. I don't think so. I think my failures have been experiences. And God, I've had a lot of experiences. The neat thing is I've been able to learn from most of them. Number 7, personal motivator. You heard me talk about the value of a personal motivator when you're trying to achieve success. It's every bit as important when you're trying to overcome a failure, because that's exactly the other side of the same thing. So what's good for one side has to be good for the other. It's just a law of physics. It can be either positive or negative for someone or to show someone, and you already know that, so we don't need to spend a lot of time there. And you need to get a role model. You say, well, what's a role model for failure? Find your inspiration. Find the person that you can look up to and say, boy, they overcame a lot. We read about it all the time, whether it be Lance Armstrong getting over prostate cancer, or somebody that if you don't and you want to, Reader's Digest every month seems to have some other tear-jerking sob story about somebody that overcame something. Now, that can be your inspiration. Now, am I making fun of that? No, I'm not making fun of that. But I could tell you a very long story about me reading Eddie Rickenbacker's story and how I learned how to walk again after being paralyzed, but that would just bore you, so I don't want to tell you about that one. So you find your inspiration. And of all the people to inspire you, who better than you? Now think about that for a second, because most of you wouldn't think so. Mostly when we think about an inspiration, we think external. We say, oh, gee, I want to think about Michael Jordan or Lance Armstrong or somebody else. Why not think about yourself as your own role model? Who knows better how to survive the present failure than the person who survived the last failure? You did it. You are your own best role model. That sounds, so strange and so foreign because, we're taught all these times that we, can't be egotistical and can't think we're cool. We can't think we're good. We can't think we're very smart. We can't think we're okay. That's all you're doing is saying, hey, I've been through this before. I've seen this movie. I know how it ends. I know what's going to happen. And you need to get up and get going again. When we lived in Muskogee, Kathy and I, we failed in a business called Hawkeye Pipe. It was in the oil and gas business during the 1980s. And we went into bankruptcy. I mean, literally $1 million in the hole. And shortly thereafter, I happened to be at a local restaurant, and some fellow whom I had just a casual acquaintanceship with walked by and he said, "Bartman, you have a rubber butt." I was afraid I didn't know what he meant. And then I was afraid maybe I did know what he meant. And so I turned, and I didn't like the guy anyhow. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, you have a rubber butt. When you fall down, you bounce back." And I thought, maybe that's a compliment. So, I don't know. Successful people are not awed by success, nor are they intimidated by failure, because they see them just as opposite sides of the same thing. And most of us, mere mortals, we don't. We overglorify our failures, we undervalue our successes. And the greatest way to overcome a failure is to put it in proper perspective, and this is but a way. And then after you've gone through the first 9 steps and you're moving again, you need to keep going. Newton's first law of physics is a thing in motion stays in motion. It's the way it is. If you don't get up and don't get started, it can't happen. If you're still sitting on the couch, you're still crying in your beer, or still blaming somebody, it's not going to happen. But once you start, you're in motion. Now, laws of nature, laws of physics start applying. A thing in motion stays in motion. So you just got to get it started. Persistence is what this is really all about. You just have to be willing to get up and move again, and persistence pays off. Vincent van Gogh, everybody knows who he is, but do you know that he only sold 1 painting in his entire life? But he painted over 2,000 oil canvases. They are worth gazillions of dollars today, but he only sold 1 during his entire life. R.H. Macy failed 6 times as a businessman before he, 7th time, opened what we call Macy's in New York, Macy's Parade. Admiral Perry, a name you may not be familiar with, but he failed 7 times trying to find the North Pole. 7 times. Somebody should have told him to quit, huh? The 8th time, he made it. Now, how much courage did it take to keep going back, saying, "I can do this, damn it. I can do this, damn it. I can do this, damn it." And how difficult was it to raise money for the 8th trip? Think about it. John Creasy received 743 rejections from publishers, some of them not very kind. He went on to publish 500 books that have sold over 60 million copies. But 743 publishers said, "John, you can't write, and quit bothering me." But he had persistence, and he kept on going. Eddie Arcaro, the world's most famous jockey, has won more races than any jockey in the history of thoroughbred racing. He lost the first 250 races of his career. The first 250 times he was up in a saddle, he lost. Now, who in hell would hire him as a jockey? And who would bet on him if he rode? And he became the greatest one. How about this fellow? He failed in business at age 22, defeated for the legislature at age 23, failed again in business at 24, suffered a nervous breakdown at 27, defeated for speaker at 28, defeated for elector at 31. Are you getting the image? This guy might be a loser. Defeated for Congress at 34. Defeated for Congress again at 39. Defeated for the Senate at 46. Defeated for Vice President at 47. And defeated for Senate again at 49. Loser with a capital L? Because then finally, at the age of 51, after failing all of his life, Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States. Now, is that a loser or a winner? Yeah, absolutely. I'll leave you with this one. Somebody we know. I would, if I could, put this on my own tombstone. Because this is the way I think of me and my life. I would rather try something great and fail as to try nothing great and succeed. I am never going to wash up on the beach. I may get shot down in flames. But if I die, it's going to be a glorious death. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a great one. People are going to talk about it. I am not going to go quietly in anything I do, because that just isn't me. And so that needs to be you. You need to be willing to take big risks and say, I hope I don't screw up. I hope I don't make a mistake. I hope I learn all the right things. I hope I get the right education. I hope I have all the right tools. But then I'm going to go do something with it. I'm not just going to spend my life in school and go from seminar to seminar to seminar to seminar and not do anything. What in the hell am I waiting for? Start. Maybe it's the wrong thing, and maybe it'll screw up, and maybe it won't work, and maybe you'll lose some money, maybe you'll lose some time. Good. What did you learn? Get up. Let's do it again. And eventually you get it right. But if you keep waiting until all the conditions are perfect, until everything is absolutely the way it has to be, it ain't never going to happen. And you'll still be sitting here staring at somebody else on a stage telling you the secrets of the universe. And you won't have any. Thank you for coming today. I really, really appreciate you guys.